IB Nation, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Sorry we're late. We were talking about, I'll give you guys a hint, Penn State. Imagine that. So we were talking a little bit about that, a little bit about the college football playoff rankings. And this weekend, obviously, guys, is going to be another weekend where the college football playoff rankings will be adjusted based on outcomes. And, of course, Notre Dame plays in one of those games that will sort of tell us a little bit about if Notre Dame is continuing to grow as a dominant team, or do they take a little bit of a step back? We're going to find that out. So this is Trevor Troberts. That's Ryan Roberts. I'm Brian Driscoll, and we are going to go over our keys to victory for Notre Dame. You guys know the drill, right? It's Thursday. We're going to go over our keys to victory, offense, defense. Then we'll get into our score predictions. We'll talk about how we see the game played. Ryan's predicting Notre Dame to lose. I'm just going to leave that hanging out there until he can correct me in about an hour. But I just want you all to be like mad at him for like an hour. Just yell at him in the chat. He didn't really pick him to lose. And then we'll hand out game balls and all that good stuff. And then these guys will take off. And then I'll be joined by Bill Bender to preview the slate of college football. There's not a lot of great games this weekend, guys, which means there's probably going to be a lot of great games. That's how this season has gone, right? Every time we're like, not a lot of great games this weekend, mass upsets. So we're going to find out who's this week's Georgia Tech, who's this week's Vanderbilt, who's this week's Arkansas. So we're going to find that out, guys, and just hope that team is not from Charlottesville, Virginia.
I hope it's Florida.
That would be nice. That would be nice. So, fellas, but first of all, before we get started, how you guys doing today? You guys ready?
Wonderful, man. Wonderful. I got roped into covering a little bit of LSU, Florida this week, which is kind of that was a little bit in jest there. But yeah, man, everything's good. Everything's good.
Are you just covering from home, or are you actually going down there?
No. They just needed help with extra coverage of
that'd be pretty awesome.
Key matchups and all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
that'd be pretty awesome. The
swamp.
I say I've been inside the swamp, Ryan, but I've never been inside of it for a game. I had a friend that was doing her master's degree down at University of Florida, and I went down there to visit her, and she took me inside the swamp. You could just like walk in, walk into the stadium, and it's pretty cool layout.
One of my best friends who's with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their scouting department. He grew up a lifelong Florida Gators fan, and he's never been to a game, but he is going to be in the swamp this weekend, man. And funny enough, he was actually in the recruiting department at LSU. So it's going to be a very interesting game for him this weekend, to say the least.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Well, Trevor, Notre Dame is a 23-point favorite over Virginia this weekend. The old Tigers are a 4-point road favorite over Florida. So going to be some interesting action this weekend, Trev. I believe that there could be, which makes me think of something. I don't know what it is.
I think I know where you're going with this one, Brian. If I were a betting man, I think I know which way you're going. And I am. And there's no better way to bet than with Irish Breakdown's new partners over at MyBookie. Okay, MyBookie is one of the better sports books out there. Okay. What you're going to want to do with them is when you go and you sign up, you're going to want to use promo code Irish. What that's going to do for you is it's going to give you a deposit bonus. So, for example, if you deposit $15, MyBookie is going to give you $15 worth of bonus bets. There's no better time to use those than on MyBookie risk-free Thursdays, which I will be partaking in once again tonight. We have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders on Thursday Night Football. The Washington Commanders rank in the bottom 4 in the NFL of rushing yards allowed. And the Eagles have Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterback-running back duos for rushing yards in the NFL. So be sure to check out some of those game lines. We have a fire lineup of college football this week. Like we were just talking about, LSU's taking on Florida. Notre Dame's taking on Virginia. Tennessee's taking on Georgia. You got the powerhouse Penn State Nittany Lions traveling to West Lafayette to take on Purdue. So there's going to be a lot of good football on. And, of course, there's going to be a full slate of football on Sundays. And there's no better way to watch that than with MyBookie. So be sure to check out MyBookie, enroll in their loyalty rewards program, which rewards you with extra cash and bonuses just for submitting bets. They're the sports book that gives you control and rewards you for every moment of play.
Florida and Purdue for the upsets this weekend.
That would be so phenomenal. That would be so great. That would be so great. I mean, I don't know that I've ever gone as hard on a team after a playoff ranking than I have Penn State this week, Trevor. I mean, I remember we did the live show Tuesday night, and you and I talked, and I was like, look, we're not going to redo the Penn State stuff. And then, of course, as soon as Penn State gets brought up, I'm just like, rah! It's like I'm like Bruce Banner from Avengers, like now's a good time for you to get angry. And like, don't worry, when I'm talking about Penn State, I'm always angry. So like, that's just take a whole lot to get me going. Had another talk about it last night on another show, but this week, guys, we got to make sure, or not we got to make sure, but Notre Dame's got to make sure that they're not that team on the end of the upset. And when you're playing a Virginia team, Trev, you and I broke it down on Tuesday. This is a scrappy football team. This is a well-coached football team, and this is a football team that has played very hard the last 2 years, guys. I mean, I've never seen a team in a blowout be the more physical team in the fourth quarter, and I've seen that 2 or 3 times from Virginia the last 2 years. They just don't quit. And they're going to come into the stadium 3-1 on the road. They just earned a win over a ranked opponent on the road. They're not going to be as afraid of Notre Dame as maybe Notre Dame fans wish and think that they were. So this football team's going to have to come out and play well. And because that's where we're at, guys. I mean, Notre Dame can't just go out and win games by a touchdown the next 3 weeks. They have to play well in order to, I don't think they have to do that to make the playoff. I think they're in if they win out. But if they don't really hammer at least 2 of their next 3 opponents, I do think they could lose the potential to host a playoff game unless there's a lot of upsets. So Notre Dame has to handle some business. And I had a friend of mine tell me last night, he said in some ways he wonders if that early season loss was the best thing for Marcus Freeman because it forced Marcus Freeman to unleash this football team and say, look, we just can't go out and win. We got to go out there and destroy people. You know what I mean? Because what were we complaining about like late September? Him coming in before the game, we just got to be methodical. We just got to not, take what they – and now you look at his team and it's like they're up, 38-3 in the backups and Steve Angeli's throwing bombs. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a different mentality, and it's resulted in this team really just destroying their last 7 opponents for the most part. So can they keep that going for game number 8? Can Marcus Freeman extend the longest winning streak of his career? We're going to talk about that today, guys. And I think it starts every week. It's the same story. The defense kind of has just done what they've done all year. That's just who they're going to be. We'll get to them. This success is going to be driven by what happens on the offensive side of the ball. A tight win, the defense is going to, I feel, the defense is just going to do what they're going to do no matter what. Whether it's a blowout win or a hard-fought win or worse is going to be determined by how the offense plays. And can they keep building on their recent success? And so we're going to start our keys to victory, fellas, on that side of the ball. And we will focus on the offense. And we all know we're going to go first. And I think it's always important for Notre Dame. This week, the importance is really twofold, Trev. Number one, it's the same that we always talk about, right? Come out. This offense does a lot better when they get into an early rhythm. They just do. They are a rhythm-based offense. They can get in funks, but when they come out and start well, they tend to play well. That then leads to your confidence growing. Your confidence growing leads to momentum being gained. Momentum being gained leads to Virginia realizing they have no chance. The second part, Trev, is going to lead into the rest of our keys to victory, which is you are the faster football team. Use it right away and overwhelm Virginia from the beginning. And that's what a fast start this time means more than just scoring a lot early. It means literally start fast.
Yeah, Notre Dame skilled positions out-athlete the skill positions on Virginia's defense, with the most competitive matchup being Jonas Sanker. Jonas Sanker in the Virginia secondary is a dude. He's a really good football player. He can make plays at all 3 levels. Like we talked about on Tuesday, it's no secret that their safety leads the team in tackles for a loss and tackles. So and I think last year he had, 5-6 interceptions to go along with it. So Jonas Sanker is a really good player, but what Notre Dame has advantage of, and you brought it up, is speed. Speed at every position. And I'm really hoping to see Mike Denbrock open up this offense similar to what he's done in the last 4 games and just get his playmakers in space. Run some deep crossers, run some crossing routes, run some deep overs, and just let your guys go be playmakers. Not necessarily get the ball in the hands of your playmakers in just running tunnel screens all day. I think they could have success there. I mean, we saw it against Florida State. Jaden Greathouse took a tunnel screen that didn't look like it had a whole lot there for 15, 20 yards. So, I want to see Notre Dame utilize that advantage that they have. And I know we're going to talk about it in all the different keys, but not just schematically, but being able to push the tempo and post-snap switches, things like that. Just utilize the advantage that you have.
Ryan, you talk a lot about this aspect being a momentum builder, and I think that's very true in this game.
It is. I mean, because I think it comes back to what you were talking about. It's not that Notre Dame's going to get to the playoff, and it's not even really about where the seed is. Like, the seed matters, obviously. Like, you want a home playoff game, and you want to obviously have the best route to potentially winning a national championship. But like, more than anything, you want to be able to see the best version of this Notre Dame team to believe that they can win a national championship. Like, that's the thing that matters most. And this is kind of a launch off point for me in this game, because when I look at this Virginia defense just in its entirety, there's really no one spot. Like, you mentioned Jonas Sanker. Like, Jonas Sanker is a good player, right? Like, Cam Robinson, although he's been banged up this year, is a good player on the second level. But like, there's no parts, like overall part of this defense that worries me in this game, really. I mean, this is one of the worst pass defenses in college football. This is a run defense that's okay, but nothing special. I mean, like, there is just nothing about this team that really gives me an overly cautious a skeptical outlook of this game. The only thing that could cause a skeptical outlook of this game is Notre Dame comes out flat offensively for whatever reason. But if they come out flat offensively, I think that's because of Notre Dame. I don't think it's because of Virginia. Like, I don't think Virginia is going to scheme all this exotic stuff and be like this incredible defense on Saturday. If Notre Dame isn't able to move the ball and comes out flat against this team, I think it's just the mental part of this game, right? Like, you just come off of a big win against a bigger brand in Florida State, even though they're a bad team. It's senior day, like all those types of things mixing together. If Notre Dame comes out strong and fast offensively, this shouldn't be much of a battle, but it's really, I think, the mental side is what needs to be locked in when you start this game.
That leads perfectly, Ryan, to point number 2, because here's what concerns me about Virginia. They're very old on the edge and up front and strong. They're not very athletic, but they're physical. And if you come out and play a slow, static game, you're playing right into their hands, right? Like, they're 2 linebackers. You talked about Cam Robinson. I like that kid. The Jackson kid's a smart, tough player. He's just kind of slow. He's just not a real athletic kid. And you talk about their interior tackles, Trev. You and I broke down on Tuesday. Real big kids, but they're not like the Jackson and Farmer kids from Florida State. They're not like Zeke Biggers, where they're big and strong, but they're also kind of, NFL caliber athletes, to some degree. They're just kind of big and strong. And if you play a real static game, you're fitting right in a slow, static game, going 12 personnel and things like that. I would be a lot more worried about this game if we were playing them, if we were watching them play with last year's personnel focus, which is just 12 personnel all day. So what that leads to, and what Ryan's point leads to, is my number 2 key to victory, or our number 2 key to victory, Ryan, is you can manipulate as a coach that fast start by literally coming out and playing fast. And I have really felt like when Notre Dame has let Riley Leonard work quickly early in games, he gets into a really nice early rhythm. And so pushing the tempo is my key to my second key. And these are all going to build perfectly together, in my opinion. Pushing the tempo does a couple things. Number one, it helps you get into that early rhythm, which we talked about. It helps you take advantage of their lack of athleticism, which you guys both talked about. It gets them on their heels, which then takes away the one thing I think they're good at, which is being physical and coming forward, right? And it allows you to get into that early rhythm. And you make this a game. We're going to make this a track meet. I don't mean track meet from the standpoint of they're going to all of a sudden look like 2011 Oregon or 2010 Oregon under Chip Kelly, right? I mean track meet, meaning we are going to play fast. We're going to play vertical. We're going to come at you, and we're going to come at you with speed. And so that to me is something I believe would be a very important piece to Notre Dame coming out early in this game and having success. Because I think you want to put this team away early. I do. I think it's very smart to put this team away early. And I want to limit as many reps as possible for my defense when I'm talking about having to go play a very physical Army triple option team next week. Very different style than what Navy played. Very different size up front than what Navy had. I want to put this game away, and that's not up to the defense. That's up to the offense. And so I want to see this team come out and push the tempo. And then what that leads to, guys, is kind of key number 3. And this is a big part of it. And Trev, you talked about this. You literally have an athleticism advantage everywhere. I am super high on Jonas Sanker. But what is Jonas Sanker's game? It's coming downhill. It's playing physical football. It's getting in the box. He's made 47 solo tackles. He's got like 7.5 tackles for loss. It's not cover in space, cover vertically. And so, to me, make this a space game. North Carolina did that better than any team that's played Virginia so far this year. And Clemson did a pretty good job of this as well, which they basically just said they ran tunnel screens, they ran quick game, they moved the quarterback, they spread them out. They did a lot of things where they just 5 guys attached, and Marion Hampton and Virginia would have to space out, and they would just gash them with quick game, gash them with run game. They'd have those 4 guys rush because they're not super athletic guys. So if they leave a run lane going, Riley Leonard's going to attack it. You need to make this a game that's about we're going to play athlete versus athlete and see how that goes for you. So making it a space game formationally, making it a space game with your play calling, which means obviously you're going to do your horizontal stretches because that's what they do, but get guys running, get guys chasing, which we saw a lot last week. There was actually a couple over routes that I thought Riley Leonard should have hit that could have gone for big plays where he forced the ball down the field. If he takes Jaden Harrison on an over route, he's catching and running. And then, of course, we've seen them do things at times where you get Jeremiah Love, out in the perimeter. I thought he should have hit him for a wide fade last week too, or slot fade last week for a big play. Do those now screens to Jeremiah Love. Get Jadarian Price in space like you did against A&M and Purdue and last week. Make this a space game, guys, because if this becomes athlete versus athlete, that's how Notre Dame absolutely dominates in this football game. If they want to say, hey, we're going to play some slobber knocker football, you're playing right into Virginia's hands. You're still going to win, in my opinion, but you're playing right into their hands. That's what they can do. It's tight area, tight quarters. I'll say this, Ryan. This would have been a really good Virginia defense 15 years ago. Like when the game was about running the football and being big and physical, this would have been a much better ACC defense 15 years ago. Today, it's one you've got to take advantage of with your speed.
I like that you mentioned formationally because that's actually something I was going to talk about anyway. Like, I don't think that this is a team that you are just going to line up in 12, 13 personnel and just bully them for days. Like, and I think that is the worst possible decision if you are Coach Dan Brock and this offensive staff, because you already mentioned him. Jonas Sanker is their best football player and is their best tackler, right? So, like, I do not want to have a heavy personnel where I'm automatically inviting him down into the box. Like, I want him to be late to the box. Like, I don't want him to be just understand exactly where it's going to go. I want to see the ability to work more. I want to see this offense line up and do some 11, 12, 11, 10 personnel. I want to see no tight end at times. I want to see them really test this team out in space. I think someone in the chat said something about RPOs. Like, we have seen a couple games where RPOs were like the big indicator early in games, and I would love to see this be an RPO game because I just don't think that this is a team that is going to match up well if you get the ball out quick. I would like to see a little bit movement stuff with Riley Leonard in and out of the pocket. I would like to see a lot of this stuff because, again, this is not a good pass defense. It's not. It's allowing over 220 yards per game, and it's only also had 14 sacks on the quarterback all season. And we know that Riley Leonard is an incredibly hard person to sack. Like, he is just not an easy player to work into the pocket. So spread it out. Let Riley Leonard get this game working. And then I think that as the game kind of wears on and you have to have lighter boxes, then I think that that's when Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, one of those guys breaks off 1 or 2 big runs where that's when the game kind of gets out of hand a little bit. But I do think that this is just wrote about this. I think this is a heavy Riley Leonard game early in this game. Like, I do. I think that if you are going to put the onus on him to help loosen everything up, get the ball out fast, make good decisions, be accurate on time, utilize the RPO game, let him run a little bit, and then in the late first, second, and then as you get deeper into the football game, that's when Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price take over the football game a little bit. So I think that is the fast start accompanied with the space game that you're talking about. I think Riley Leonard is your biggest weapon to start this game off this week.
Trev, Ryan talked about, this isn't a 12 and 13 personnel game, and I agree. I hinted about that earlier. That's why I would not have liked to have played this team as much. But one thing that I think Mike Denbrock has done really well this year at times that I could see him doing in this game, and I'm going to kick it to you, Trev, and Ryan, if you have thoughts on this, I'd love to hear it. But there's been a couple games this year against similar teams where he has gone 12 personnel and actually thrown the ball more. out of those looks, which we never saw in the past, where it's almost like, hey, I know you're big, I know you're slow. We're going to get you into your 12 personnel defense, and then we're going to move Mitchell Evans outside or Eli Raritan outside, and we're going to attack you throwing the football. I could see maybe something like that where you get Virginia thinking, hey, base defense time, let's get everybody down in the box, and you run some sort of wheel route, some sort of seam route, something like that. But that also fits into what we're talking about, though. Make this a space game, because Mitchell Evans and Eli Raritan are better athletes than their linebackers and safeties as well. But it all fits into the same mold of, if you're going to go play, with your big boy personnel, use that to your advantage. Get them thinking, okay, now they're playing into our wheelhouse, and then take advantage of take some shots. I mean, it all comes down to being aggressive and getting your athletes in space. And sometimes the athletes in space is 88 versus, the Jackson kid at linebacker, or Cam Robinson, or Jonas Sanker on a play action where, right, to your point, you get him sucked down. So if he is a guy that wants to come downhill, then do things to take advantage of that, right? Don't just come out in 12 personnel and say, okay, we're going to play power football, which is what Ryan's pointing to. If you're going to do that, use that against them. It's almost kind of like reverse engineering things a little bit. But whatever the case may be, you make it about your athletes against their athletes, Trevor. And that includes running backs. I mean, did you guys see how North Carolina used Amorian Hampton in the pass game against the UVA linebackers? I love Amorian Hampton, but Jeremiah Love can do that. Jadarian Price can do that. It's also about the tight ends. It's about using all your personnel, not just, okay, Bo Collins, okay, Jaden Greathouse, okay, Jaden Harrison and Chris Mitchell, you guys got to carry us today. It's also about using those guys. Absolutely. On top of, as Ryan was saying, Trev, having Riley Leonard be a part of it. But I could see this also being a game where maybe your tight ends are a big part of maybe some of that vertical passing game. Right, like we saw a little bit last year, like Wake Forest, for example, a couple deep shots to Eli Raritan. They tried to do that against Florida State. Riley didn't throw it. Eli was open on the corner route, and Riley didn't throw it. But maybe this is the game where you start to see a little bit of that. Or is that just me wishful thinking because I really want to see the tight ends become more impactful down the stretch? Maybe that's it a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the wishful thinking at all. I mean, I agree. I like when Notre Dame passes out of 12 personnel because it's a tendency breaker. It's no secret that Notre Dame's identity is run the football first. And Notre Dame has shown that in games like this where they've had gone up against bigger interiors, is they do still sometimes try to just run into the teeth of the defense and rely on Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price breaking one open, which is something that I would like to see the tendency kind of go away. One thing that I was thinking about too is I think you're going to see a lot of play action early. With how downhill and aggressive this defense is, I could see something out of pistol a lot. I really could get Riley's back turned to the defense for a second and just rely on your athletes to go out in space and hit Mitchell Evans in the seam, right? Look for Jaden Greathouse on a deep over, So I think those are two things that you could see relatively early into the game, and just rely on Virginia keying in on that tendency of, Notre Dame's going to run the football. We're going to come downhill. Jonas Sanker loves to play downhill. Your linebackers or box linebackers are very comfortable playing within, call it the hashes, and come downhill and stop the run. So I think that's something that you could see early too.
Hopefully, son of a biscuit, perfectly into point number 4, Ryan. Go ahead. Take it.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, hopefully, I was actually going to make a joke. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Stay aggressive for a second. I was just going to say, hopefully, they're not in man coverage or we can't run play action. Oh, Jared Parker's not there anymore. I'm sorry.
Why you got to get petty with my guy, Jared Parker?
I'm sorry.
Why you got to go there? Why you got to go there? Well, the segue was, and that would lead to it as well. But the segue is, Trev, it's take your shots. I mean, Ryan's talked a lot about it. You talked a lot about it. What are the two things that you guys have focused on in today's show? Number one, Notre Dame's a more athletic team, right? Notre Dame's a more athletic team. Number two, Virginia's a real aggressive team, right? Get them in space, do all these type of things. Well, what is that all geared towards? Ryan talked about them being a really bad pass defense. I mean, if you guys, we love doing data here. This is a team that gave up 403 yards to Wake Forest, 302 yards to Coastal Carolina, 263 to Maryland. Their quarterback's not very good. 254 to Boston College. I mean, Thomas Castellanos had his probably best passing game of his career against Virginia in that game. So, he completed 73% of his passes and 254 yards in that game. Gave up 345 to Clemson and then 293 to North Carolina. Ironically, you could argue their best pass defensive game of the season was against Louisville, who was coming off of back-to-back losses to Notre Dame and SMU. I think they were just a little bit shook at that point in time. But, it really, but that's what it comes down to, guys, right? Your dudes are better than their dudes. So what do we talk about? Come out, start fast, have that aggressive mindset that we've seen a lot of lately, right? Push the tempo, get them on their heels. Don't just come out and play. Let's play big boy smash mouth football. Make it a space game with everything you do. And what's the ultimate goal of all of that? Ryan, you kind of talked about it. Trevor, you talked about it, hinted about it. It's this. It's make the big plays, but not just the big plays that come from Jadarian Gashinum, Jeremiah Gashinum, which this is what this offense is great at. But it's like I said last week, Trevor, it's a little bit of like 0.4 from last week. Go big game hunting, right? Take your shots, get your matchups on the perimeter, and look for ways to be aggressive throwing the ball down the field. That's our final key, is take your shots, right? Sometimes it's a trick play. Sometimes it's just, we got cover one, and that safety is going to come downhill. Chris Mitchell, it's time for you to do your thing, or Bo Collins, or Jaden Greathouse, or Jaden Harrison, whoever, Mitchell Evans, whoever. Take your shots. That's going to be the other thing in different ways, not just go balls all the time, but find ways to take your shots, because this is also a defense that is very vulnerable to giving up big plays, especially against teams that have some athleticism. And that's exactly what Notre Dame has on all phases of the game. Just to point out, Virginia this year, guys, as Trev, you and I talked about, 116th in the country in most plays of 30 yards or more allowed on defense. Notre Dame has been one of the best big play offenses in the country this year running the football. One of the final missing ingredients to me of this team, fellas, is kind of taking that final step, is becoming more of a team that can also rip off big plays in the pass game. That, to me, is sort of that final missing piece, and this is the perfect team to kind of take advantage of that against you. Saw a little glimpses of it last week. We saw some of it against Navy. We saw a little bit of it against Stanford. Now, just keep building on that and be willing to take your shots. Do that. Do all these things. And not only do I think Notre Dame wins, fellas, this isn't just keys to victory. This is keys to a dominant victory, in my opinion.
I think it needs to be a nice passing game just in general, because, we talked about the pass defense isn't good, and I think that you're correct. Notre Dame should be able to make a bunch of explosives potentially in the passing game. I would also say this is that there really hasn't been a game this year where you're just come out and like, wow, all of the wide receivers did some good stuff today. It's usually like one or two, right? Like last week, it was like, wow, Jaden Greathouse had maybe his best game of the season. That's awesome. The week before, even with the drop, it was like, oh, Jordan Faison was the guy, right? Like, is he going to be the go-to guy going forward? We've had a couple Bo Collins games. Like, it would be great if we just had a game here going down the stretch in a very manageable 3-game stretch where you're going into hopefully a deep playoff run here, where all the dots start getting connected a little bit from a passing game perspective. We see a couple big plays for Bo Collins. We see Jaden Greathouse get down the seam for a big ball like he did against Navy. We see Jordan Faison make a big play. I would just love to see an entire performance from this passing attack. I don't want to see one or two guys. Mitchell Evans, you would just had your best game of the season, even with that catch called back. Can you continue to build on this? I want this team to be able to make some explosive plays, but more than anything, I want them to be able to be a cohesive unit, maybe for the first time this year.
That's where the big plays are going to come from, especially against the better teams, guys. Like this is what I'm talking about right here, right? To your point, Ryan. Notre Dame this season ranks 10th in college football in most rushing plays of 30 yards or more. They rank 10th. They're doing that with an offense. They rank 8th in most plays of 50 yards or 40 yards or more. They rank 7th in plays of 50 yards or more, right? Get the hint, 6th in 60 yards or more. And they're doing that with a pass game that ranks 119th in most gains of 30 yards or more. If you start adding a little bit more of that element to this, how do you defend this offense as you get ready to go into the postseason? And so that's why I do think that this is something important. And we've seen more and more of it in recent weeks. They had multiple 20-yard gains last week against Florida State on different ways. To your point, Brian, it was like that's where we saw a little bit of a glimpse of that. For the first time, you had Jaden Greathouse made a big play. Jaden Harrison had 2 20-plus yard gains. I thought Mitchell Evans should have had another one. He had the touchdown gain. You started to see like, okay, this isn't just a Bo Collins game. This isn't just a Jordan Faison game like it was against Navy, where it's like, okay, it's just okay. We're trying to see a concerted effort to get Jordan Faison the ball. He would have had another 20-yard gain if he didn't drop the freaking ball. But he did then went and converted a 4th and 10. So the spreading, there's lots of guys you have that are capable of making those type of plays in different ways. It's time to hit those, because if this offense becomes a legitimate, hey, if you're going to play man coverage against us, we can take advantage of it. You're going to have some success. And look, you guys both watched the film. Early in the game, I wasn't loving the separation they were getting against Florida State, but by the second quarter, I mean, there was like 5-6 yards between guys on certain routes, and they just it didn't click with the quarterback per se. He had a couple of them later, but you started to see finally, hey, they're starting to get a little bit of that when they did it against Navy as well. They got to carry it into this game, because their corners, like Ryan, I said this on Tuesday. The corner they have, I can't remember his last name, the 6'2" kid, looks identical to the Thomas kid from Florida State, except he's just not fast or athletic like that kid is, right? You know what I mean? Like, take advantage of that. Go after him like every other team.
He's the Twins. He's the Twins version. He's Danny DeVito. That's who he is.
Right. So take advantage of that, guys, is really the big thing. So take your shots. Anything else you guys want to add about the offense before we move over to the defense?
Overall, I just want to see a clean game. I feel like with the passing game, it was almost there, but Bo Collins had a drop and a fumble. It was almost there, but Riley Leonard sailed a couple passes. It was almost there, but I just want to see a clean game executed to its highest. That's what I want to see.
No more drop passes, man. There were way too many drop passes last week, and then obviously Jordan Faison had 1 or 2 the game before that as well. So hold on to the ball, clean stuff. Notre Dame has been a very good team for the most part of not turning the football over, which is great. But let's now combine that with not dropping the football and just being a clean operational team. 100%.
Well, fellas, we're going to go to the defense next, guys, but do us all a favor, everybody. Before we do that, there's a little button down there that has a thumbs up on it. Hit that like button for us. It helps our channel. It takes you like 3 seconds to do, especially if you're on a phone. It's even easier to do on your phone. You just got to kind of go like this, click it. If you're on a computer, you just grab your mouse real quick, boom, hit that like button. We would greatly appreciate that. And it, of course, helps us continue to grow our channel and build what we're trying to do here at Irish Breakdown.